Welcome back to the Garden Hutch. Today we discuss week 10 of 2023. Let's get going. So week 10 overall was fantastic. We had a couple things, a couple days of rain. Towards the end of the week, it got pretty dadgum cold. That leads me into going into week 11. It is going to be cold. We're going to have several days below freezing. We'll get to all that here in just a bit though. Before we got started on that, I did want to kind of show you a few things we got done on the homestead during week 10. So here in the old garden, I did get the T-post set here for the trellis system for the cucumbers. We haven't quite decided what we want to do yet. I did go ahead and measure out and cut some bamboo stakes. I'd like to get all of that stuff done now so that I can get that mess right there cleaned up in the upcoming weeks. We've had a lot of rain, so I can probably get to burning, so that's a good thing. But anyway, down here, I haven't quite decided exactly how I want to do this yet. Last year, we used all bamboo and it worked out pretty well. We overplanted our cucumbers last year though, so you know, it ended up getting infested and it was a little hard to get rid of all the squash bugs that lived in there. This year we're going to go a little different. It's kind of a theme in all of the garden beds actually, but we're going to plant less to hopefully get more. So the idea is I'm going to use these bamboos as crossbars, and then the trellis system I had for our pole beans last year, since we're not growing pole beans, I'll probably use these little panels that we just found them. So these panels like right here, and I'll brace those against the cross beams of the bamboo and see how that goes. That's the tentative idea. I also think maybe on the top I'll use a little bit of chicken wire to give them something to sort of hold on to. They do get blown around quite a bit here in the summertime. We have quite a bit of wind, so. Look at those garden beds. Before we go talk about the trellises up here, I did want to point out that we will be picking lettuce here probably the first day of week 11 of the year, which will put us at about 5 to 6 weeks earlier than last year. You can see this butter crunch is starting to fill out really well. The leaves are starting to get nice and supple. They'll go really good in a spring salad with some of the greens that we have to thin out. And the radishes, we pulled a couple and they are actually starting to form underneath, so they should be ready this time next week as well. We're incredibly excited about that. But that's not what we're in here for. That's just kind of a side project. This is what I wanted to show. This is where we're going to plant our cherry tomatoes. Right now I just have one bamboo stake. Measured them out at 14 feet and then put, you know, some of them quite a bit in the ground. We want to be able to plant our cherry tomatoes, one in front of each one of these, and then as it goes up, we'll weave in smaller pieces of bamboo on the backside for support so that we can, as it vines out, it'll have plenty of room to grab onto, that sort of thing. Last year we had 6-foot posts and they just weren't enough, so we're hoping that our cherry tomatoes do really well again this year and can grow all the way to the top, if not higher. Look at that sky this morning. I'm gonna step in the greenhouse. It's windy and cold outside. So one of the big things that happened this week is almost all of our tomatoes and peppers have come up from the indoor greenhouse. So as they come up, I go ahead and move them out to the greenhouse so that they can start getting onto a daylight cycle. The reason I bring that up here is because going into week 11, as I mentioned earlier, there are going to be several days where it's going to be below freezing. Now here in the greenhouse, it got below freezing last night. It got right at 32. The greenhouse stayed nice and warm. We didn't have any adverse effect on the plants, I'm sorry. We'll take a look at them here in a second. But the reason I wanted to bring that up is because we are doing a seed starting video. I'll put a link right up there for the first one so you can kind of watch the series if you're interested. But right now is a crucial time for our summer plants. And while it's only early March, it is incredibly important that we pay attention to this because this is sort of our livelihood, right? Like we want to make sure that these plants succeed. If I screw up and leave them out in the cold, or if the greenhouse is inadequate for the temperature, anything along those lines, then we're going to have to go out and shell out money to buy our plants from a store, We're also not going to be able to plant all the cool varieties, specifically things like the Dancing with Smurf tomatoes, that kind of stuff. So it's important that we kind of stay on top of the weather and we proactive as opposed to reactive. So that's a long way of saying going into this week, I'm not going to take any chances. This was 32, so I wanted to have an idea of how well the greenhouse did, and I could probably leave some stuff out here. So what I've decided to do is I have a couple extra tomatoes, and I'm going to leave them here in the greenhouse whenever it gets down to 28 or 27 and see how well they do. I probably won't leave them in here anyway just because I'm paranoid of losing all of my plants. So all I'm going to have to do is each night before I go to sleep, I'll go ahead and take all of the plants from the greenhouse inside. Now, that's only the plants that are susceptible to freezing, right? So our tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, ground cherries, that sort of stuff. It is quite a bit to take care of all at one time. Leslie's nice enough to help me take everything in. And then the next morning, of course, you got to bring everything back outside. But I guess the alternative would be losing your plants. So it's well worth the time doing that. So all of that being said, let's just take a real quick look around the greenhouse. So as you can see, our sugar peas here are doing quite well. They've taken to this bucket really well. The marigolds that we put in there, they're doing well so far too. So I kind of think these peas will be sort of the canary for us to see if when it gets below that 25 mark how the greenhouse does. So hopefully we'll find out this week. Moving on here, I did want to show we have made a significant push this year to increase the amount of flowers that we have in our garden bed. So you can see here, Leslie's got all of her flowers moved over to this greenhouse just so we don't have to carry too many things indoors. These flowers will be fine in here. We're not going to have to take them like we do the summer plants. But you can see they are all over the place. And then over here, take a look in there. Those are my tomatoes. I'm really proud of them. We still have about a dozen or so that haven't come up. We also have a few of our pepper plants that haven't come up. Right now, it looks like the Carolina Reapers and the yellow pear tomatoes are the slowest to germinate. I'm going to kind of keep that in my log, and so every year I can kind of look back and see if it's consistently the same plants that are slow or if it's just this version of the seeds. And then over here, you can see we have some more of Leslie's flowering plants through here. Our chard and kale are coming up beautifully. Down here, we have a lot of our herbs, our basil and dill. We planted 18 of all of them just to make sure that we would have enough, and they all came up. So apparently we're going to have a lot of basil and dill this year. Then we'll come over here. These greens and onions and things, I sort of have earmarked for something. We'll talk about that here at the end of the video in just a second, but those are earmarked for a special little project we're going to bring for you all. And then down there we have some more of our sugar peas. I want to point out I've had this greenhouse for less than a month and I've already started cluttering it up, so I really need to get out here and start cleaning up a bit. So before we let you go, I just want to tease something here real fast. We have ordered a new raised bed that we're going to put out in the old garden. Keep an eye out for a video of that. We've got it ordered. We're going to kind of go through the whole setup process, the assemble, the setup, and the planting. So that should be something fun to look forward to. What we try to do is we're going to try to set it up as a spring bed to start with and go through the cycle of the greens, the peas, the onions. And then in the summertime, it's going to be sort of a catch-all for our tomatoes, our peppers, some herbs, and see what does best in that specific area, kind of like we do with all the rest of our raised beds. With all that being said, we appreciate all you folks who made it this far. Till next time, I hope everybody takes care of themselves. Peace.